I gotta try to find another,
Wayne, do you want me to lead this? Or
I'll interject, but the whole day is...
You should show up. It's a good...
Part of the...
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go into executive session to discuss a pending health issue relative to an employee. So can I get a motion to go into executive session? Supervisor Strauss, second by Supervisor Wild. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to do horseback.
Right, no action was taken in executive session. Can I first of all get a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting? Supervisor Strauss, seconded by Supervisor Leggett. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Supervisor Leggett, did you have a motion?
Should we bring a motion to the floor of filling a position in the planning department?
Right, I think that...
Is that a timely thing to do?
No agenda, no, yeah, no. So we have a motion on the floor to advertise and put in forth publication for County Planning Department, seconded by Supervisor Wild. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Can I get a motion to adjourn? No? Okay, Ed, okay.
That's all right. Before, Wayne, do you have anything else? I just want to thank the committee for their consideration, and I would ask that items that were discussed really, other than what is public record, kept private. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Wayne.
Mr. Chair, before Wayne leads, this really involves Wayne more than my component, other than the fact that Wayne is looking for the Warren County LDC to provide funding, which occurred back in 2004 for the outdoor historical drama feasibility and planning report. I only have one that Wayne provided me with. But Wayne, did you want to give just a very brief summary? The request is for under $5,000 to do basically an updated study for this historic drama festival for Warren County.
One of the things that we looked at, this is a study that's been sitting on the shelf. It recommended going forward. There was some internal issues with the organization at the time, and I kind of brought this back to light simply because the governor has indicated a desire to create and support larger scale venues in the Adirondack Park as a means of economic development. And this report was funded through grant funds a number of years ago, and while most of the data still remains actually pertinent to today, the town of Lake George, I've talked with Supervisor Dickinson, and there's a project site that we briefly looked at before, I've talked with him, and that site is available. It's up near their recreation fields and right near the Northway exit for Lake George. And I inquired to the Institute for Outdoor Drama as to what we would need for an assessment of that site, and they've come back with a proposal. Since we used economic development funds for this before, and those funds now reside with the LDC, I contacted Ed and we've had discussions. The sticking point has been lodging costs, and we are former Lake Luzerne Supervisor Larry Bennett's been actively involved with this organization, and I talked with Larry actually at a Lake Luzerne School Board meeting a couple weeks ago, and he indicated he would try to secure those lodging services as an in-kind service from some individuals that he knows. So we're waiting on that as kind of the last part of this, but we'd like to be able to schedule this for the fall and have them come up, take a look at it, take a look at the old data, see if it's still a viable project to look, to push forward. The economic analysis at the time indicated that, the Last of Mohegans as an outdoor drama in this area kind of was somewhat of a no-brainer. They looked at the economics of it and felt that the market was there. We just want to see if it's still a viable project and use the economic development funds that are in the LDC, separate from the loan pool as a means to offset this really at no cost to the county itself.
Sounds like a great idea, Wayne. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, thanks. I'm wondering if it's better for this to come out of our occupancy tax fund as compared to EDC.
Is there technicality on that? Because it was an LDC thing to begin with?
Was it originally an LDC thing?
Yes, it was, yeah. The feasibility report in 2004 was paid for out of the warrant.
Yeah. Why don't we stay with the LDC based on the size of that report, yeah?
Wayne and I had that discussion as well, and it really, I think it might be more feasible to come out of the LDC rather than the occupancy tax.
As a gift, an investment, how would that be classified, right? Because we're
I
talking...
think it's a economic development feasibility study.
Okay.
On the issue of whether or not that this continues to be. Now, again, this is 2004, we're 14 years down the road now.
Sure.
Is to really determine whether or not, and I know that there's been kind of renewed interest over the past couple of years. I've had discussions with Larry and others relative to, again, looking at this issue to determine, I mean, from an economic point of view of creating another venue like this to draw upon the history of Warren County, and again, this is something that adds another small dimension, a small piece to bringing additional, perhaps new tourists. And these are the kind of things that I think that collectively the county's trying to do, is to look for new missions, if you will, in areas. So we're bringing a new set of individuals to Warren County that are more historically minded. Again, there's been tremendous talk from Fort Ticonderoga, Fort William Henry, Washington County, and Saratoga are really doing much more in connecting the history of our area. Some people that's something they're interested in, and for others, I think that this could be another area to look at beyond just the last of the meetings.
As I think, Mr. Chair, as an unrelated follow-up, and I just wanted to present it to the committee, I was up in Skroon Lake this past weekend. There's a campground there, I think it's called Skroon Manor.
Skroon Manor.
Skroon Manor, that actually has
It's in the town of
an amphitheater.
Chester.
It's in the town of Chester. Is it in the town of Chester?
It is in the town of Chester.
It is a phenomenal outdoor
Yes.
amphitheater. Right?
Yeah.
I was amazed when I saw it a couple years back, but just as a thought.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
if you think about bringing people, there's a campsite right there, right?
Outside of a movie,
Yeah.
many years
So,
ago.
not that I have any, preference in terms of where it's located, but I just think that there's some historical value with that site also that
Yes,
might
sir.
be worth considering.
We, in probably 2000, looked at that, did a feasibility study on the Skroon Manor site, and actually we embarrassed DEC because 50 Wolf Road didn't even know they owned that property. And so we started the process through a grant to redevelopment of that, and then the state said, well, it's our property, I guess we need to take care of it. Hence, they built a campground there. But yes, it does have the old outdoor amphitheater. Natalie Wood starred there, and Marjorie Morningstar. It had a par 3 golf course. I mean, it's quite the site up there. And the old trails and everything are still there. It's pretty interesting.
So if we could go through that study, we could consider that site.
If the state would make it available, it's kind of small for the standards of what we're looking at, but it's certainly worth the drive-by.
Okay, thanks.
Claudia?
What is the site that you are considering?
It's up, it's near the town rec fields right now that when you go off of the Lake George exit and head towards Lake Luzerne, almost immediately there's a right-hand turn into the town facilities that are there, and
There's a
there's...
boat washing station and follow-up video, that's what
Yeah.
you're talking about?
Yeah.
So Wayne, what's the expectation of timing on this?
I would think in order to get the comp rooms, we're gonna wait till the fall, September-ish. But they need to put it in their schedule to know if they're coming. The person who used to be the head of the Institute for Outdoor Drama, Scott Parker, was one of the ones that was here before. He has since retired, but he has agreed to come back because of his previous knowledge and be part of the two-person scout team, basically, to give us an assessment on the site.
Wayne, is there anything we should be doing in terms of developing a more detailed scope of service from their proposal?
Not really. I think, it's an assessment of the site as it relates, and if the site proves to be viable, which it should be. I mean, they did take a cursory look at it last time, but we need a more in-depth look and assessment. And, if it becomes a viable site, then we need to look at, okay, that study does need to be updated, and that would be a more involved process. And
So right now, it's limited to the one site?
yeah. I mean, but Scott will come up to my house for dinner, and we'll go up to Scareroon Manor and do a drive around. So.
Supervisor Strauss, sorry, hand, kind of.
Yeah, well, I guess that kind of answered my question. I was wondering if they're going to look at alternate sites. I remember last Mohegans played out with some success at the Wild West, Ralph Macchio's Wild West place, which they had a nice setup there, I thought, for this, but even then it was limited success. So if you get someplace that's kind of out of way and not near the nucleus of what's happening, like Shepherd's Park would be, I just wonder about the success of it, but I guess that's what feasibility studies for.
Right.
So, are they going to take a look at alternatives?
Right now, that's not what I asked them. If that's what everybody wants to have happen, we can certainly adjust the scope. It would then require a full RFP to go out, though, because of the cost. Really, they're the only game in town, but the process would be that we'd have to issue a full RFP and go through that whole process, and, we can certainly do that, but...
Great. Can we get a motion to go ahead with Wayne and Ed's proposal for a Warren County outdoor theater to keeping in mind the terms and conditions as reflected in this letter. Supervisor from Queensbury, second by Supervisor Leggett.
And if we can include this is coming out of LDC funds, include that.
That it will be coming out of LDC funds. Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
Gene Kelly was also on that movie in 1954.
Dance with him? Were you an extra? Ed, were you an extra?
No, I was not. I just like to, I like to research all the films and TV series that are going on historically in our Warren, Washington, Essex County area, and that was significant, but it was disappointing.
Great.
Gene Kelly never came to Chester. Natalie Wood did, but Gene Kelly stayed down in New York City.
I was hoping to just take a couple of moments, if I can, to have maybe an abbreviated short discussion as it related to IDAs, related to our meeting on Friday,
Can I just
okay?
pass out my report then?
Sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Mr. Bartholomew.
Oh, there, someone do it, Mr. Wild.
Mr. Wild,
I already got one.
wait a minute. Are there
Oh,
there's two different ones?
Available added?
We have two different thicknesses.
But I don't have collaborating on mine.
Oh, here.
Thank you very much, Ed.
Just to make sure.
two different ones.
So that's
This
probably
one
it.
doesn't collaborate, is that okay?
Oh, yeah.
That last one? No, I have a collaborator.
Great. I just kind of a couple of thoughts. I thought we had a good discussion on Friday. I think Travis has brought up some issues that I think need to be discussed, and as it relates to IDAs, as it relates to LDCs, as it relates to funding, as it relates to employees. So I didn't say a whole lot at Friday's meeting. I thought about it that evening. I reached out to Frank, and I had a meeting with Mr. Kenny and Frank yesterday afternoon, right up at the courtyard. Okay, and they shared with me some information that I think should go in the public record, and they expressed some concern. I would say that Mr. Kenny, to minimally, was animated in his feelings as it related to the information that was indeed presented. So the net of what they told me was this. They did receive an occupancy tax, not an occupancy tax, but a mortgage tax exemption, which equated to $250,000. They received sales tax exemption that equated to, by the information that they showed me, that is in our county file, of $301,000. So essentially, $550,000 of benefit that they received. They currently have 113 employees. In 2017, they paid $201,000 in occupancy tax. They probably, in general terms, sales tax revenue to Warren County, maybe something under $300,000. So going forward, we have an enterprise that, for an investment of $550,000 on the front end, enables Warren County to receive something in excess of $500,000 a year. They provide their employees health care. They provide their employees a 401k. They did not ask for any form of contribution to take away from their local school system, from the Lake George school system. They did not ask for a contribution to reduce benefits to the village of Lake George. So, it seems to me we have a kind of a plain vanilla package here I've come to the conclusion, based on the information that they provided me, actually made sense. And if I would have had to have voted on this 3 or 4 years ago, I would have voted for it, based on the information that I have. Seems like an investment of $550,000 to recoup an investment of $500,000 for the next 50 years seems to me makes reasonable economic sense. A couple of characteristics about the lodging industry in our area. There is a significant amount of old inventory. Rooms that have been on the marketplace for the last 60 years, okay? How do we find a normal, kind of keep your hands off economic equation, which lets the marketplace come forward and replace that old inventory, that enables this region to be competitive in the tourist industry? The courtyard, very busy, appears to be very successful. Mr. Kenny took me on a tour of his conference facilities. 2 major rooms that he has, in the facility to provide for weddings, banquets, those kind of scenarios. my bottom line again is, I listened on Friday. Some deep concerns were expressed. I think, based on my discussion with Mr. Kenny, again, very animated, okay? A little bit concerned, okay? That the information that was reported was not accurate information. So I just wanted to set the stage. What do chairmen of economic committee meetings do? You know, when these issues are brought to the floor, it seems to me we want to reach out to the principals involved in the equation. That being the people that own the property, that being the people that obviously want to support this property. So my effort yesterday was to get information, and again, I've come to the conclusion that this is a reasonable project and something that I would have supported. Now, does that make the guy across the street unhappy? Of course it does, okay? Everyone's in business, okay? But that's the function of leaders in the world we live in. Sometimes you make tough decisions. Sometimes you make decisions that may be a little bit uncomfortable, but that's just the way it goes. So I throw that out there, and if anyone would like to make a comment, feel free.
I just would add to your commentary about that hotel is the idea around that hotel was the year-round economy. Those other competing motels in our area, a lot of them are seasonal and closed for 9 months of the year because they can't make it. I mean, you can drive up Route 9 and you can count the unopened motels. They're in the majority. So this hotel with its conference room and its plan was to help build this year-round economy that we've been hearing about in our tourism committee, our ITAX committee. I think it was a good project. It was all done by the rules. The developer made a significant investment in our community to help us achieve the goals that we're all trying to.
I was hoping to meet someone that had the courage to put his name on a $20 million mortgage. And the first person I met yesterday was Mr. Kenny, and he actually had a couple of more gray hairs than he's had in the past, okay? So, go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for doing the research on that, Mr. Chairman, meeting with people that are directly involved. As part of the IDA, there are specific industries that are eligible for these tax breaks on it, and hospitality is one of them because of the economy. Also, in regards to that, there was a few emails that went between supervisors, and Supervisor Beatty pointed out, what's the standing of New York State in regard of business friendliness? Where are we on that?
On the business friendliness? Well,
49th or something?
Well,
like that?
actually, we're 49th in the country. The
Okay.
CEOs of the United States that rates all the states puts New York State at 40, the second worst business climate in the country.
We have very little impact on the state level of what can encourage that. But at the local level, what we do have is a safety relief valve. And it's our IDAs, LDCs, CDCs that have that, and EDCs that have that ability to court and encourage investment in our communities to benefit us all. And as you had pointed out, a $550,000 tax break in one of the heaviestly taxed states in the country makes a more even playing field for business to get started, and we reap the returns rather quickly on it.
Yeah. And I'd like to make one last observation, just to repeat myself. He did not get a break on his school taxes. He did not get a break on his local taxes, okay? Seems to me the biggest problem that maybe a guy like John Stroud might face is that, the taxes that are paid in Queensbury, they're school taxes, okay? So if you get a break in Queensbury, and I can only refer maybe to the breaks that have been given in Glens Falls, they always include a break on local taxes. To my recollection, Jack, in school taxes, generally speaking, those are the kind of inducements that are given. So, go ahead, Mike.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I just wanted to add a comment that kind of expands on what I've heard already. And many of you know that I've just been appointed to the IDA. When I first considered this, I think the Industrial Development Agency industry, right? My first thing that came to thought was manufacturing, heavy industry, let's make something happen, great. But the more I contemplated this, it's industry. And one of our biggest industry is tourism. So I think that we need to have a realistic approach in terms of how we go forward with this. And of course, try to bring some manufacturing in, but we still need to think about supporting one of our major industries in this region. So,
I just want to say, I do, as far as the transparency thing, I think it's a great comment that Travis had brought to the floor. Anything that the IDA can do to make this whole process more transparent, that is, I think, all of our goals. And the proper venue for it, I would say, is the agency.
Right.
And, that full board. And I just want to remind everybody, there's a meeting tonight at 4 p.m. in Washington County at the Board of Supervisors.
Dr. Whitehead, would you like to make a comment?
If I could.
Great, please do.
Yes.
So,
Get coffee, Brad.
we had a discussion on Friday a bit, and I think we were pretty clear that there was a mortgage tax involved somewhere around $250K, which
That's true.
apparently he agrees with.
No, absolutely.
I made it very clear that there was no pilot involved with the Lake George, as you have said. But we have a form that was filed by the IDA for the sales tax exemption, and it clearly says $1.4 million. However, he's saying he's only taken advantage of $301,000 of it, and that may be the case. But I wouldn't have any knowledge of that. I have a form here, an official ST60 form that says he's asking for $1.4 million.
They showed me the forms that indicated the $301,000 sales tax. So I actually saw them, Travis, yes.
Well, I can show you this form too, and it says $1.4 million on it.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's all I can say. I can say a lot more. Actually, so there are two other motels that were subsequently approved. They also got sales tax breaks. They also got mortgage tax breaks. That's going to have direct impact on the county. In addition, they asked for and got pilots. So that's going to have an effect on the Queensbury School District, as these things are in Exit 18 and Exit 19. And then there's another one on Exit 18 that's in the process of being put together, and I would imagine we're going to have to extend the same incentives to them. While I do understand that tourism is a huge industry here, and I would agree with that, in a industry where they are the first to admit that there are getting to be too many rooms here, and that they're eating each other's lunch, you got to think what adding another 800 rooms does to this area. Does it encourage several thousand people to go ahead and say, I want to come to this area because I understand there's a new motel? I don't think that's why they come here. I think they say, I'm going to come here because they have wonderful beaches. They have, great hiking, biking, all kinds of different things like that. And I'm all for encouraging, making sure that gets better. Putting a smaller motel out by a bigger motel doesn't seem to be on the top of my list. On the top of my list would be, Irving, Tissue, RWS Manufacturing. There's, Manchester Wood. There's other, things on their list here that are industrial projects that, have created good jobs for the area. And Angiodynamics, another one, and should, have priority. But as far as I can see, there's no difference in what I said the other day and the information I have in front of me. I still have this $1.4 million here. I will say one thing additionally, though, and that's how this has been reported. The state asks them to report the costs for the town, county, etc., and the number of jobs created. So back in 2016, I have a list here of all the counties in New York and all the new projects that were created. And one of them is Warren Washington County IDA. They report that year one new project, and they talk about what the costs would be and what the projected benefits would be. 59 new jobs. Well, as it turns out, I have other data that shows on that very first year that Marriott went in business, all those numbers appear in reporting as well to the ABO. But how this goes is, and this is supposed to calculate the cost per job. What the state actually does, and I want to make it clear that I don't think this is Warren County, Warren Washington IDA doing anything untoward. What I'm saying is this is how it looks to me like the state is asking that it be reported. And what they are doing is they are reporting the estimated 59 new jobs and what monies were spent that very first year. In this case, only $210,000 was spent the very first year of this project. So if you divide that out, 210,000, 59 new jobs, it turns out to be about $3,600 a job. If you just take the numbers that you gave me, where Mr. Kinney himself says, no, it's like 550,000, not 215, now that number is going to more than double the cost per job, okay? And then if you use the numbers that I have from other IDA documents that says, no, it's like $1.6 million for 59 jobs, then you come up with a number like $27,000 per job. So I'm saying there's a huge difference between $27,000 a job and $3,600 a job. And what you need to do is, when you guys decide, if you ever get the chance, because remember, this issue, and my biggest complaint the other day, was this issue never came before this board. Nobody here was even, I wouldn't say nobody, but the vast majority of the supervisors were not even aware that they had given up this mortgage tax money, that they had given up this sales tax money, because by the law, all they needed to do was to put a small ad in the Post-Star 10 days before the public hearing, and which nobody saw, obviously, and it seems to be the case in general, that nobody really reads those little ads in the back, the legal ads in the back of the paper one day. A meeting was to be held to discuss this in Lake George. So I have the minutes of that meeting. It was conducted on March 2nd, 2015 at 10 a.m. John Lapper, attorney for Mr. Kinney, summarized the project. They then asked for any public comment. There being no public, there was no comment. Then it says meeting was adjourned at 10:04. So that's all it took to get this thing done, was 4 minutes of public hearing where there was no public. And I've been at other public meetings, by the way, public hearings, where the people in charge of it refuse to even answer questions when the public asks questions. Well, Mr. Whitehead, this is a public hearing. We, by law, have to hear what you have to say. We, by law, do not have to explain anything. This is exactly what happened on several public hearings regarding the airport. Exactly. So what I'm saying is there is a big problem with transparency. The problem might go well outside of the county. I am not going ahead and saying that Warren Washington County is doing anything different than any other county, but what I am saying is the public is not seeing the whole story, and in many cases, my own elected officials are totally oblivious to what's going on, and if they even looked harder, they'd see reports that indicated falsely what the costs of these jobs are. False. False?
I got it.
False.
Good question.
Thank you, Travis. The reason we're talking here today is that we in Warren County believe in open, honest, and direct communication. We want to get it on the floor, we want to talk about it, and that's the whole point. Go ahead.
Well, that's good, and we're going to meet, I've already sat down, well, I haven't sat down yet, but I have agreed to sit down with Matt, and he suggested actually that, I want to be open, I want to be transparent, can you explain this stuff to me? We're going to get together Wednesday morning, we're going to go over all this stuff. Supervisor Beatty expressed the same interest, he's going to join us. I just had the opportunity a few minutes ago, as I was kicked out of here for 2 different executive sessions, to sit down with Don Lehman. He saw what I have to say, and I think, in just a matter of a couple of minutes, he could clearly see that there is a problem in the reporting of the cost of jobs. And again, is this Warren County that's doing this terrible thing? No. But it is being done, and we need to shine light on it, and that's my intent.
Supervisor Simpson?
I was going to say, those projects have a start and an ending.
Yeah.
Could those numbers be reported that way because those jobs are created and you're putting it in relationship to the benefit that was given in a period. So maybe they started a project in September rather than a full year, but it shows 2016. I just wanted to point that out, and maybe between now and Wednesday when we meet, that may be something to, because the benefit that was derived during that year may not match up to the timeline of the actual employees. And
if I can comment on that, they publish this list every year for all new projects, and again, it uses only the first year numbers. However, subsequent to that, every year, the Warren Washington IDA and probably LDC and other things I haven't looked at, and probably Saratoga and everybody else, goes ahead and gives a different report. And what they do is they say, what has all the money that's been spent this entire year on all these, in our case, maybe 20 some odd projects, how much is that, and how many jobs did it create? And they come up with a number. Well, that number isn't $27,000. It's not even the $3,600. It's more like under $1,000, because now this is what happens. You're right. They report on this job for like 10 years. I'm looking at the hospital. It's been out there for 15 years. For many of those years, it's $0 that they're getting in benefit. Yet, for some reason, every year, they're putting in that we got 665 jobs over at the hospital. And the next year, 665 jobs for the hospital. And the next year, 600, it changes a little bit every year, but more or less 600 jobs at the hospital, which is another thing. I go ahead and question whether we really have 600 more medical professionals here, or whether we just took their private practices and rolled them into the hospital. Because I go to those guys, and I used to send bills to them, and now I'm sending bills to Glens Falls Hospital. I believe they are now considered employees of the hospital. There you get into other issues as well. So, no, that it only gets worse when you look at it in that direction, and we'll see that on Wednesday.
Thank you, Travis. Supervisor Leggett's going to kill me here, but Beatty, did you want to say something?
Yeah, this is absolutely excellent, the discussion we're having. We're peeling back the onion. Doesn't mean the onion's bad.
Right.
It just means we're getting more information out to all of us. And I think that's what all of us really want to see. I think the Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board was a huge indicator. Nobody thought anything was wrong. Nobody even knew what they were doing until Mr. Whitehead started peeling back the onion and said, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense, that doesn't make sense. And now we have the director resigning, we have new direction up there, and so forth. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the Washington-Warren County IDA, not in the least. I'm saying they probably follow all the state guidelines and so forth. But we've never had a discussion, since I've been up here, and this is my 5th year, about a tax break, about, in a committee or in a boardroom setting, about a tax break for a hotel, or a tax break and this and that for a manufacturing business or so forth. And this is good, solid, honest discussion that's long been needed. and maybe some of us would draw different conclusions. But we need to have this, and I thank Mr. Whitehead and for starting to bring out some of these things, and we can go forward now. And I think Matt's going to do a good job in trying to bring some transparency, additional transparency, to this process.
We're,
Thank you.
got to adjourn. Go ahead, Claudia. Yeah.
Just quick, I mean,
Go ahead.
Supervisor Simpson mentioned that we should attend the meeting. It would be nice, we necessarily don't need to have conversations here, but it would be nice to know when those types of projects that impact Warren County are coming up so that we can go to those meetings. Just have more awareness about what's happening that impacts us. Because seeing it on the calendar and knowing when the meeting happens, but knowing also that there's something important to us.
Can we get a motion to adjourn? Supervisor Beatty, seconded by Supervisor Simpson. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. All right.
See you later. Yes, you have